Welcome to your Thrive Era podcast, a show for high achieving women who are done with burnout and ready to reclaim their time, energy, and joy. I'm Shannon Logan, mom, wife, coach, and entrepreneur for over a decade. I know what it's like to juggle it all and still feel like it's never enough. But everything changed once I developed my set protocol. The simple yet sustainable way to take back myself, my energy, and my time. If you're ready to break free from burnout and finally thrive, you're in the right place. Let's dive in. Welcome back, everyone. I'm so excited to chat with you today. Oh my goodness. I am finally free. Finally free after 2 weeks. If you're listening to this, I'm recording this in the middle of February, and my daughter has been wicked sick for the last 2 weeks, and it has been a roller coaster here in our house. She had the flu very badly, very high fever, close to 103 for 2 or 3 days. Then she developed bronchitis on top of it, and she was only 3. She's now 4, but it was towards the end of her third year. And so mama was playing nurse, caregiver, wife, business owner, coach, entrepreneur, all of it for 2 full weeks. And now we are finally back to a quote unquote normal schedule, normal routine. And we'll see how long that lasts, right? Because if you have kids, you know they bring home sickness like they bring home their extra uneaten lunch. Comes home with them every day. So I'm just grateful to be here today, guys, and be chatting with you and to get into something that I am very passionate about. And in the last 5 years, especially once I became a mom, but even before then, found was revolutionary for my life. Just completely changed the quality, my excitement for it, my presence, my peace of mind. So I want to get right into it today. And bear with me for a second, because I have a kind of a funny analogy we're going to be talking about. So let's be honest. I don't know about all of us, but most of us have a plant somewhere in our house. It's basically living on a prayer. That old Bon Jovi song. I know I do. I probably have more than one. And maybe that plant, maybe it's started out strong. Maybe you start out strong with it. You were watering it, making sure it got plenty of sun. But then, life just got busy. And now, well, that poor thing, that poor cute little plant on your kitchen windowsill, it's just hanging on. It's got the crispy edges, and it's begging for someone, anyone, to really just remember that it exists. Well, spoiler alert, our values, those things that's supposed to be driving our life, guiding us through, they work the exact same way. If you don't nurture what actually makes you you, things start to fall off. You start waking up exhausted, wondering why you feel stuck, why everything you're doing isn't adding up to the life that you thought you were building or the life that you thought you would have. And before you know it, you're like that neglected house plant. You're technically alive, but you're definitely not thriving. Here's the good news though, okay? So when you nurture what makes you you, everything else changes and it happens relatively quickly. Suddenly, you start to feel energized. Decisions become easier. And dare I might actually even say you start enjoying life. You wake up looking forward to the day instead of that dread when the alarm clock goes off. You see, when you start nurturing values, your personal, real core values, you can't help but succeed because everything you're doing is aligned with what naturally fuels you. You stop fighting for balance and you actually instead you start to feel it. How awesome is that, right? It's not this tug of war, push pull. It's not this grind. It all just ends up being a instinctual flow. So today we're talking about nurturing values, pouring into what truly matters and how it brings out your best self. Because when you make space for what lights you up, you start showing up better in every aspect of your life. And as always, I'm going to keep it real. I'll throw in some laughs and I'll make sure that you walk away with actual tools, not just those Pinterest worthy ones that you forget in like 10 minutes after you turn this podcast off. All right. So let's dive in. All right. So as we get started into how to nurture values, let's talk about why it matters so much. My entire coaching program, Whole Woman Reset, is built around what I call the SET protocol.
Because if you want to thrive, you have to master these three things. Set stands for self, energy, and time. Self being who you are, what you value, and what you truly want. Energy, how you fuel your body and mind so you can show up powerfully and present. And then time, how you structure your life to reflect what's important to you, where your time goes, what you spend it doing. And out of all three of those, self is the foundation of it all. If you don't know who you are, if you don't know what actually matters to you, no amount of self care, no amount of productivity hacks or morning routines or green shakes or workout programs or special lotions or none of that is going to make you feel fulfilled, content, grateful. That's why we always start with values in my coaching program above else. And today, we're talking about the piece of that most people forget. Nurturing those values so they don't just fade into the background like the plant, the plant that's downstairs on my kitchen windowsill, that I swore I was going to take care of. Thankfully, I take a little bit better care of my daughter than I do that plant. So, what happens when you don't nurture your own values? Well, oftentimes, I'll get real with you, like life gets busy. And the first thing I tend to stop making time for, and I'm sure you do as well, is I stop making that time for myself. And that's usually the stuff that is making me unique and gifted and excited and energized. So think about it. How many times have you said, I just don't have time for that right now? It could be a hobby, it could be self care that actually restores you, or it could be just maybe even a few minutes to breathe. One of the things I've really gotten routine into is if I'm driving up to the house and I'm by myself, I'm in the car by myself without my husband, without my daughter, without our dog, I take like between 5 and 10 deep breaths before I go into the house. And it's nothing like I'm not always walking into chaos. Sometimes I am, but it's more so to help me shift and help me center and reset nervous system and just kind of give myself a little bit of breathing room, literally, before I try to show up the best I can for the people inside those doors. So, like, it doesn't have to be some big deal. It doesn't have to be a blocked out weekend. It doesn't have to be an entire life change, right? We often tell ourselves we'll get back to it later. Those things that we used to love. But then weeks go by, months go by, oftentimes at that point, years. I know since I've had my daughter, years have like gone up in smoke. And one day, often my clients wake up and realize they don't even recognize the version of themselves that they see, the one that's running the show. I mean, they're doing incredible things. They're working hard, they're keeping the house up, they're cuddling kids, they're making date nights or attempting to, you know. But sometimes they wake up and they're like, holy hell, how did I get here? I just don't even recognize me anymore because I'm not doing anything for that person. So, just to share a story of my own, here's a personal example. One of my biggest values is faith. And I always believe that my relationship with God should be at the center of everything that I do. If it's not, I've usually put my own will back into it and it gets tricky and messy really quickly. But also, there can be times in my life where things get busy and I get into this tunnel vision of just getting things done, checking off the checklists, making sure everyone else is taken care of, making sure, the bills get paid the way they're supposed to, the house gets maintained, there's food in the fridge, just all the checklists that I have for my business, for my coaching clients. And what ended up happening was I started adding God to that checklist. And what I basically did was I prioritized my schedule over spending real connection time with my higher power. And like I do a devotional each morning, but it was very easy to add that to like another checklist item. Like, all right, I'm going to sit down, I'm going to read this thing, I'm going to say a quick prayer, and then I'm going to go on with my day. And while I was attempting or pretending, I wasn't even attempting, I'm just going to say the word, I'm going to call myself out here. While I was pretending to be present, I was really just adding it up to a checklist. right? Just another thing to get done on my to-do list. What ended up happening is I started to feel drained again. I started to feel just off. A good friend of mine calls it that sandpaper feeling where I just inside just felt a little rough, like I was grinding. And it wasn't because I wasn't accomplishing enough, because I was. There was a lot going on. Example, when my husband was gone for 10 days and I had my 3-year-old by myself and our puppy by myself, and in-laws weren't available and my folks weren't available, and I was running my business and I was in the process of selling it actually, and we were coming up to close date and things went awry, and I was trying to manage all of that. And so it was very easy at that point, like when I needed to be rooted in my faith the most, it would have been easy to chalk it up to a checklist because it was a mile done. And I did. I ended up feeling burned out. I ended up feeling drained. And luckily, I can catch that feeling now quicker than I used to. And so it popped up and I started making shifts. Because what was happening was I was completely disconnected from what fueled me, what fuels me, right? I made a story in my head that the more I got done, the more I accomplished, the more calm and centered I would feel. But again, I'm human and I'm continuing to learn that lesson and I forget it. It's like I have a built-in forgetter. And it didn't work, right? I was taking withdrawals out of my own bank account. I wasn't really depositing anything back in. Trying to do everything on my own strength instead of leaning into God's guidance, spending time with my higher power, and really filling my soul back up before I went to go take care of everything else. So once I realized that, again, it didn't take me that long because I don't like pain these days. It's not fun. And so when I start to feel it, I know I'm out of alignment somewhere and I start to figure out where I went awry. But the moment I started nurturing that core value of faith again, intentionally making time for prayer, for reflection, and like leaning into that and just sitting without rushing, things shifted. Imagine that. My stress levels dropped. I had a longer fuse. My mind racing, that was just kind of nonstop at that point. It seemed to calm down quite a bit. It didn't stop completely, but it definitely dropped down. And that's the power of nurturing what matters most to us. It's like a barometer that brings us all back to center. So, how do we make sure our values aren't just words on a page and that we actually nurture them? Because I've worked with so many clients that at some point wrote values down, had them in their mind, knew what they were, and then forgot to ever go back to them until it was, January 1st the next year. And they're like, what want to do with my new year coming up? So, how do we make sure that we stay present in them, stay grounded in them daily, consistently, in ways that feel doable and they're not going to just make us more stressed out? Well, first of all, you may not like this answer, but you need to schedule time for what fuels you. You need to schedule time for what energizes and fuels you. You have to schedule it, especially if you're a business owner, especially if you're a mom, especially if you're working a demanding full-time job. If you have these pieces of your life, I know they all have a Google Calendar attached to them. And you probably dictate your life off of what is on your calendar. And all those pieces of the puzzle mean that something's not scheduled, it doesn't usually happen. That's why in my coaching program, we just don't talk about the values. We schedule them time weekly to live them by the things we enjoy doing, by reading our vision, by feeling how it's going to be when we achieve our goals. For example, let's say a big core value for you is growth. You like to learn new concepts, new ideas. It might be reading, it might be taking a class, new skill, or you have a value of adventure, right? You want to go on a trip, you want to see a new place. Possibly you value connection, spending uninterrupted time with people that you love that feed your soul. All of those things are amazing, but they all require you to write them down and schedule them. When do you want to go on this trip? Is it going to be in December? Is it going to be in March? How long? What do you need to do to plan for it? There's a million steps that have to happen. And scheduling it in where you're seeing daily, weekly, monthly reminders of it is going to make your success, your ability to achieve it, to have it happen, much more likely. So I always love to ask myself, I get up in the morning. You don't have to be like me. I get up at 4:45 every morning, except on Sundays. And there's a lot of reasons why, but I'll get into that later. Part of it is because I like to be alone and have a cup of coffee by myself and just before the world needs me. And so while I have my cup of coffee, I do my Bible reading, I do my prayers, I do my meditation. And before the day starts, I ask myself, right, what's one way I can nurture my values today? Because I know what's on my schedule. I have an idea of what's coming up. So if I have that already outlined, I can reflect on it and say, what's one way I can nurture my values today? What's one way I can make space for what really matters most? And again, it could just be pausing in the car before you walk inside after work to reflect on things or to take a breath or to get yourself rooted in why you just worked a really hard 8, 10, 12-hour workday, what the reason was behind that. Pausing just to reflect makes it easier to stay aligned with what fuels you. It makes it harder to drift off. If you're spending time constantly reviewing and pulling back in, you can't get off course too far before you make that change to get back on that road that leads you to your best self. Now, this might sound crazy, but also start your day, right? Schedule it, and then set up reminders. Our iPhones, our laptops, everything, Siri, Google, Asana, like we have all of these AI check-in accountability buddies. Set up reminders. If you know that you have this gap of 10 minutes from, you know, commitment A to commitment B, put an alarm in that is named with breath work, named with gratitude list, named with something that you can do in that short amount of time to realign you with yourself and your values. We've all had moments when we intend to stick to something, and then like 2 weeks later, we completely forget about it. That's why we need reminders that are tactile, that we can hear, we can see, that make us stop and pause and be like, oh, that's right, I meant to do that thing. I like to have mindset for when I get places. You can do that on the iPhone where a reminder can pop up when you leave or when you get somewhere. Okay. Also, accountability. This is a secret sauce to life. I'm gonna give you the secret sauce to all of my success in the last 10 years has been because I have had gotten accountability. A lot of it. Any area that's important to me in my life, that includes my business, recovery, all of it, I have accountability for. And so to stay accountable to, you're much more likely to do the stuff that you said you were going to do. Okay? So get accountability, set up reminders. They can be sound. You can write values somewhere where you see them daily. Spend that time reviewing them and have an idea. So those are just a few, right? We've got scheduling them first and foremost, checking in with them when you start your day, reminders, accountability, and then honestly, one of the favorite parts of my week is my weekly reflection. I do this on Saturday mornings. I get up early again. I have more time because people tend to sleep longer in my house on Saturdays. My daughter, a little bit. I might get extra 15 minutes. But after I do my prayer and meditation, still have my cup of coffee, and I review my week and I go through and I say, like, where did my values show up in this? Did I nurture what really matters the most? Or where did I drift? And what are some small shifts that I can make next week? If you're never taking inventory of what you're doing, you'll never know what needs to change. Only when you hit that really bad pain cave. So by taking this weekly inventory, by reading my values, by sitting on them, by reflecting on how the week prior went, it, one, makes me feel good because I have hope, and two, I'm reminded of where I can kind of switch things around a little bit. And so I can get back on track much quicker instead of it being a month down the road. And now I blow up at my husband because I'm exhausted and I've kept too much to myself and he's blindsided by it. And it really has nothing to do with him, but it's just because I'm worn out and I've become a crazy person. Not that anyone else out there has ever done that, I'm sure. So here's what happens when you start actively nurturing your values, when you start seeing them more often, talking about them more often, living them, you have more energy because you're not just trying to get through life, you're actually engaged in it. You have more clarity. The noise in your head quiets down because decisions become easier. That internal guide is really well queued up. Man, I'm always looking for mental clarity, right? Less decision fatigue. And you also have more success of whatever kind you want. Success in parenting, success as a family member or as a friend. You can't help but succeed when you're aligned with what naturally drives you. See, it's not about doing more, it's about doing what actually matters. And when you do that, you feel unstoppable and you can run through walls and you can have the courage to make the changes that maybe you've been wanting to do for years but weren't sure if you could actually accomplish. So, as we wrap this up, okay, remember your values are what make you you. And if you spend time nurturing them, they will never fade into the background. Because the moment you start prioritizing what fuels you, girl, you can't help but thrive. Just like this podcast, this is your thrive era. So, 3 ways to start. Right after this podcast, go take action. Don't just listen to me and have it be a nice message. Go put it into your life so you can start feeling better right now. First, schedule time for your values. Because if it's not on the calendar, it won't happen. It doesn't have to be complex. Just take 5 minutes here or there each day and schedule it in. Set a reminder, right? Start your day with a value check-in. You're going to have to go to the bathroom. You're going to have to probably drink some water. I would assume all of us are drinking coffee. If you're not, I'm impressed. Tie it to something that you do in the morning already. So it starts to get built-in reminder. Oh, when I have my coffee, I also start in with my values and how they're going to go through the day. Okay, where can you show up? Where it could be a challenge and what's your game plan for it. And then use reminders and use accountability. Find someone that you're comfortable with sharing this. Find someone that won't let you off the hook because they care about you. Okay, and share with them what you're trying to do. You'll have a confidant, you'll have a buddy. You're more likely to walk out that walk if they're texting you, calling you, checking in on you, and you'll feel more aligned, you'll feel more authentic, you'll feel more pride because you're acting in your own gifts, your own blessings, your own core values. And everyone else, man, they're just going to see the light come back on in you and they're going to be like, dang, what is she doing? And all you have to say, man, is I'm living my thrive era, right? With those core values. Well, that's all I have for today. Thank you guys. Feel free to send me a message on Instagram, Coach Shannon Logan. Email me. I would always be happy to chat with you, Shannon at CoachShannonLogan.com. And go out there and start to nurture your values because I don't want you to be a dried up house plant. You're too good for that. Till next time. That's it for today's episode. If this hit home for you, don't just let it be another thing you hear. Take action. And the best way to start? Download my free masterclass, The High Achieving Woman's Escape Plan. 3 steps to reclaim your time, energy, and self. In this exclusive session, I'll show you exactly how to save over 5 hours a week, stop burnout in its tracks, and live in alignment with the real you. Click the link in the show notes and grab it now. And if you love this episode, be sure to subscribe, leave a review, and share it with a friend who needs to hear this. Until next time, keep thriving.